Before she vanished without a trace. Before the late-night calls that chilled her family for years. Dorothy Jane Scott was just trying to protect the people she loved. But the person who wanted her was already watching. Have you ever felt like someone was observing you, even when nothing was there? Tell me in the comments. Dorothy Jane Scott wasn't the kind of woman anyone expected to end up in a true crime story. She was gentle, private, calm. A young single mother who kept her circle small and her life simple. Her co-workers described her as the kind of person who always stepped in to help, even if it meant putting herself last. She worked at Swinger's Psych Shop and Custom John's Head Shop in Anaheim, doing office work behind the scenes. No drama. No enemies. Her routine was tight: work, home, take care of her son, repeat. But even in that quiet rhythm, something dark was already creeping into her life. It started with phone calls. Anonymous. Persistent. A man she didn't know, but who somehow knew everything about her. He said he loved her, then threatened to kill her. His voice would switch sweet to violent, in the space of a breath. If someone called you every day, refusing to reveal who they were, how long would it take before you went to the police? Let me know below. Dorothy was protective by nature, especially of her son. She didn't tell him about the calls. She didn't want to scare her parents either. She handled it alone, at first. But here's the thing about danger. It doesn't always show itself as a monster in the dark. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it observes. Sometimes it pretends to care. That whisper would soon become a threat. And that threat would become a disappearance that has haunted California for over 40 years. Before we continue, I want to know what you think. Do you believe Dorothy's stalker was someone she knew, or a complete stranger watching from a distance? And if you're drawn into this story already, take a moment to subscribe. It helps this channel bring you more cases just like this. And it means a lot. The calls didn't stop. They didn't slow down. They only became sharper. Every day, Dorothy picked up the phone to a man whose voice she didn't recognize, but who described her clothing in perfect detail. He told her what she was wearing, where she had been, what time she left work. He even told her which coworker she had just spoken to, as if he were standing only a few feet away. If this were happening to you, would you change your daily routine or confront the caller directly? His tone shifted without warning. One moment he told her he cared for her. The next, he promised to take her life. He said he had a gift for her. When she asked what it was, he told her, "You'll see." Eventually, the wait became too much. She told her parents. Her father urged her to change her number, to take precautions. Her mother tried to comfort her, but she admitted something chilling. Dorothy said she recognized the voice. She couldn't place it, but she knew she had heard it before. For a woman described as gentle and soft-spoken, the change in her behavior was startling. She started keeping to herself more. She avoided walking alone. She double-checked the locks. But the biggest sign of her fear came when she told a coworker something nobody expected. She said she was thinking of buying a gun. Dorothy, who avoided conflict at all costs, felt unsafe enough to arm herself. She contacted the police, but with no solid evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They suggested she try to get the caller to say something identifying. They offered advice, but they couldn't offer protection. Dorothy at her desk, the phone ringing again. A coworker watching her hesitate before answering. Everyone at work noticed the fear in her eyes when the phone rang. They noticed she stopped going out alone. They noticed her smile fading. The caller was tightening his grip. He was becoming braver, more direct, more unhinged. And Dorothy was running out of time. Before we move into the night she vanished, I want to hear from you. At this point, what do you think the stalker wanted from Dorothy? Attention, control, or something far worse? If you're following this case closely, make sure you're subscribed. The next part of this story is where everything changes. May 28, 1980. To everyone around her, it looked like an ordinary Wednesday night. Dorothy left work with two co-workers, Conrad Bostrom and Pam Head. The plan was simple: drive straight to the UC Irvine Medical Center. Conrad had been bitten by a spider earlier that day, and the pain wasn't letting up. But even in a stressful moment, Dorothy stayed calm. She drove them to the hospital, talking quietly, steadying Conrad's nerves. Pam later said Dorothy didn't seem scared that night. Not visibly. But on the inside, nobody really knew what had been happening to her. She didn't mention the calls. Not that night. They spent hours waiting for Conrad to be treated. Talking. Drinking coffee. Trying to stay awake. Pam later said Dorothy never left her side except once. To check on her son and make sure he was safe. Dorothy was protective. Always. Even when she was exhausted. Even when she was scared. When Conrad was finally cleared to leave, the three walked out together. Dorothy noticed his arm still looked irritated. She insisted on going to get the car so he wouldn't have to walk far. Pam watched Dorothy walk across the parking lot, calm and focused, her long skirt catching the breeze. A few minutes passed. Then, a car approached. The engine roared. The headlights were blinding. Pam waved, thinking Dorothy was rushing to pick them up, maybe even joking around. But the car didn't stop. Didn't even try. It turned sharply out of the parking lot, accelerated, and vanished into the darkness. Pam and Conrad just stared. If you saw your friend's car speeding toward you, then suddenly racing away, what would you think in that moment? At first, they didn't panic. They thought maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe she got a call about her son. Maybe she was rushing home. But deep down, something felt wrong. Dorothy never returned. Her car never circled back around. By 4:30 a.m., they called her parents. By sunrise, the police were involved. They searched the roads. Every route she could have taken. Every place she might have pulled over. But Dorothy was gone. Do you believe Dorothy left the parking lot willingly? Or do you think someone was already in the car? If you want to keep uncovering this mystery with us, make sure you're subscribed. The next part is where this case becomes truly haunting. After Dorothy sped out of the hospital parking lot, her parents and police searched for hours. Every road, every alley, every stretch of highway. They kept telling themselves she'd call, that there was an explanation, that she was safe. But the phone never rang. Around 4:30 a.m., almost 2 hours after she vanished, a patrol officer spotted something. Dorothy's Toyota Celica. Someone had set it on fire. Completely. When investigators searched the area, Dorothy wasn't there. What does the burning car suggest to you? Panic, a cover-up, or someone sending a message? For weeks, the police found nothing. No footprints. No evidence. No sign of Dorothy. It was as if she had vanished into the night. Her parents described those days as the worst kind of torture. Not knowing if she was alive, or if she was suffering. And then, the calls began. Are you home? Is Dorothy there? When is she coming back? At first, they thought it was a cruel prank. But the voice knew things. Details only the stalker could have known. For 4 years, the calls continued. Always the same calm, eerie voice. Always asking for Dorothy. Always hanging up the moment her father answered. It was psychological warfare. A haunting torment. Why do you think the caller kept contacting the family for 4 years? Guilt. Power. Taunting. The calls eventually stopped. No warning. No explanation. Just silence. And for a moment, the family hoped the nightmare was ending. But in August of 1984, a construction worker found something in a remote area of Anaheim. They found charred human remains. Beside them, a dog's remains. Authorities believed the dog might have died years earlier, but Dorothy's bones were much more recent. Dental records confirmed it. Dorothy Jane Scott was gone. The haunting part? Right after her remains were identified, the phone rang again. Do you think the killer called after her body was found because he knew? Or was it a coincidence? If this story has you hooked and you want more deep, cinematic cases like this, hit subscribe. It helps the channel and keeps these stories alive. 4 years, Dorothy Jane Scott's case sat in silence until certain details resurfaced. Details that forced investigators, old and new, to take a second look. The original profiler described Dorothy's stalker as a male in his late 20s to early 30s, socially isolated, intelligent, and patient. But modern profilers expanded that picture. They suggested the caller may have been someone who worked near Dorothy, observed her daily habits, and built a delusional attachment over time. Then came a break. A phone specialist reviewing the call patterns discovered that every call to the Scott family was made from different payphones, scattered across Orange County. No fingerprints. No witnesses. No camera footage. None existed in 1980. But the caller's timing was precise. Almost rehearsed. And here's where I want to hear from you. Do you think this caller was acting alone? Or did he have help watching Dorothy's family? Let me know your theory in the comments. Privately, detectives admitted they had a leading suspect, someone who matched the behavioral profile and had access to Dorothy's daily life. But without DNA technology, without surveillance cameras, and without the caller slip-ups they hoped for, they couldn't make an arrest. And when that suspect died in the late 1990s, so did the strongest lead they ever had. Today, Dorothy's case remains open. Not cold, not forgotten, just unresolved. Some detectives still believe her killer may have kept trophies. Others think he confessed to someone long after the crime. And you, watching right now, might notice a detail or pattern others missed. What motive makes the most sense to you? Obsession? Jealousy? A delusional fantasy? Drop your theory below. Your comment helps push this case back into the spotlight. Before we wrap up this documentary, we need to look at one last chapter. Because there's a reason Dorothy's case is one of the most haunting unsolved crimes in California history. Her story doesn't end with the investigation. It ends with the legacy she left behind. Dorothy Jane Scott wasn't a victim first. She was a mother, a daughter, a friend who always put others before herself. Her story is often told through the lens of fear. But those who knew her remember something different. Her kindness, her quiet strength, and how she was always the first to offer help, even on the night she disappeared. 4 decades, Dorothy's family pushed for answers. Every interview, every appeal, every heartbreaking phone call. They kept her name alive when the world was ready to move on. And in many ways, that persistence is the reason her case is still remembered today. Cases like Dorothy's challenge us to look deeper, at the victims who deserved so much more, at the families who never stopped searching, and at the reality that even after 40 years, the truth can still come forward. Because unsolved doesn't mean forgotten, and silence doesn't mean the end. Before we close, I want to hear your thoughts one last time. What do you think is the single biggest reason this case remains unsolved? The lack of evidence? The caller's intelligence? Or a failure in early investigation? Your insight might help drive this case back into conversation, and that matters. If you found Dorothy's story as important and haunting as we did, I invite you to join this community. We cover cases that deserve more attention, and together, we keep these victims' stories alive. So hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and share your thoughts in the comments. Not just for the algorithm, but to make sure stories like Dorothy's are never forgotten. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next case.